with positive energy. That is so cool, and if anyone deserves, Hannity doesn't show. You can catch me every morning on Fox and Friends, and also, that's 6 to 9. You can also listen to the Brian Kilmeade Show, the fastest-growing show in the entire country on radio. And if you have some time, do what I do. Check out my book, Andrew Jackson, The Miracle of New Orleans. It is now number 7 in the country, and is also, by the way, enjoying a 9-week run on the bestseller list. If you want to hear of a book that talks about a great American success story that was so good for Andrew Jackson, it propelled him to be the most famous man in America and became President of the United States. He won 2 terms. And by the way, today, just to bring you up to date, they're cutting back the tree that he planted in honor of his wife right in front of the White House, a magnolia tree. So they pruned it back, but it's still there. So history lives. David Webb is in for Hannity. Please watch.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, they did keep the tree, and we kept it right here for you on Hannity. Welcome. I'm David Webb in tonight for Sean. A lot of breaking news tonight. President Trump, this is brand new, telling the New York Times that he thinks special counsel Robert Mueller will treat him fairly. That kind of flies in the face of the narrative in the press. The president also saying that the Russia investigation is making the country look bad. And also tonight, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes slamming the DOJ and the FBI for what he says is a failure to turn over documents related to the anti-Trump dossier. Plus, a Pew Research study proves just how biased and unfair the mainstream media has been to President Trump. And the president calling out China over a recent report that they're illegally selling oil to North Korea. We'll have reaction to all of those stories. First, President Trump closing out the year by touting his accomplishments and looking ahead to 2018. In Washington tonight with the details, our very own Ellison Barber.
Hi, David. President Trump is expected to meet with Republican leaders early in the new year. The White House says Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Paul Ryan are both invited to Camp David, the very first weekend in January.
I think you'll see the president roll out infrastructure plan in January, and the president has already invited Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan to Camp David the first week.
The administration is still deciding on the top priorities in 2018, but some potential items include immigration reform and infrastructure. White House officials tell Fox News they are planning to lay out an infrastructure plan in January. Officials say they're looking at spending about $200 billion in direct federal spending and easing environmental and labor regulations that they say will stimulate $1 trillion in public works investment.
Infrastructure is the easiest of all. We're very well on our way.
We are ready with a strong infrastructure bill that was put on the president's desk in January. We're still waiting to get feedback on that. It would create 15 million jobs.
So what are we going to do in 2018? We're going to pick up where we left off and get back at reforming health care. We're going to get back at reforming these entitlements, and we're going to take on welfare reform.
President Trump promised $1 trillion infrastructure bill on the campaign trail. Democrats already have an infrastructure bill, as you just heard. And as you also heard from Paul Ryan there, some Republicans seem to have other ideas when it comes to the top legislative priorities in 2018. President Trump also seems to think this year has been a legislative success. He tweeted a couple of days ago about tax reform, saying that business is looking good for next year, quote, only to be helped further by our tax bill. Today, he tweeted about retail sales, claiming they're at record levels, and he also tweeted and retweeted a couple of articles praising his work on things like MS-13 and the economy. David?
In the 2018 midterm elections, I put the emphasis there because we'll discuss it. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich saying not so fast in a new.com op-ed, foxnews.com op-ed titled "Get Ready for the Political Surprise of 2018." Gingrich explains how the Republicans will shock the political landscape in 2018 because of 3 key factors. 1, Republicans keeping their promises. voters rejecting fake news, and because Americans will have more money in their pockets thanks to the GOP tax bill. Joining us now with reaction, former Secret Service agent and Conservative Review contributing editor Dan Bongino, RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany, and former Clinton pollster and Fox News contributor, and our friend Doug Schoen. Doug, let me go right to you as the the man in the center politically. We'll call you that. Absolutely. As the centrist Democrat.
Well, I would say to my good friend Newt Gingrich, go back to 1994 when the Democrats passed a tax bill with no Republican support, and it led to a Republican wave, the Contract for America. And I think with President Trump at a level of approval in the mid-30s, the Democrats with 11-point lead in the generic vote, and history suggesting that in the midterm of a first-term president, that there's an average of, I think, 24 to 30 odd seats picked up in the House. It's much more likely that the Democrats have the blue wave you spoke of, David, than that there be a Republican wave.
Yeah, but Kayleigh, is this the same environment as 1994? And I've said this before, we've got a generational change. We've got a change in the electorate. You look at the changes in the state legislatures. I understand Doug's points on the history of this and the track record, but you know what? History and polls aren't always right.
Never win. Their optimism, they have no cause for it now because Donald Trump has achieved historic victories. You look at ISIS, 15,000 fighters 2 years ago. Now there are fewer than 1,000. You look at tax cuts, $1,000 in American people's pockets starting in February. Every single front Donald Trump has achieved, and every single front Democrats have obstructed, they've deceived, and they've distracted from the issues the American people care about. It's a different generation for sure, a different time, and Democrats do not have cause for optimism in 2018.
All right, Dan, now Secret Service agents are blue-collar guys. You know, you get paid okay when you were there, but you don't get a whole lot of money. The blue-collar economy, the blue-collar billionaire, now President Donald Trump, do you think those centrist Democrats, do you think those Midwest Democrats are going to go back to the Democrats over the Republicans and over, I think more importantly, over President Trump?
No, David, they're not. I mean, what are the Democrats offering you other than that Republicans hate you because you're fill in the blank, you know, the identity politics routine? Seriously, what are they offering? And the answer is they're offering nothing. I mean, is their policy going to be next year to run against the tax cuts? In other words, we think the government should be entitled to more of your money. Here's a better one. Are they going to run against the repeal of the individual mandate and say, no, we think you should be able to, you should be forced to buy again next year overpriced, really crappy health insurance that nobody wants? I mean, they've yet to put on the table a substantive platform outside of the identity politics agenda that's going to resonate in places like Pennsylvania, in the panhandle of Florida. I think this blue wave is a fiction. I could be proven wrong, but I doubt it's going to happen.
All right, now, Doug, before we go to you, because you've really been involved in the trenches in campaigns, and Kayleigh as well, I want to go to the leadership and call it the old guard. This is Howard Dean, he of the famous Scream, talking about what's needed in the Democrat Party. Let's play this.
Sure.
I actually think the progressives are in the process of informally taking over the Democratic Party. I think the country has moved to the left. It's shocking to me, but a majority of Americans think Medicare for all is a good idea. I mean, and that, frankly, Bernie gets a lot of credit for that. I don't think he's going to be the next nominee, but he could be. Because I'm very much for somebody who's younger. I think my generation's got to get the hell out of politics, start coaching, and start moving up this next generation.
All right, so, Doug, I'm going to put up two screens and let you take it from there. You know the structure of running a campaign. Here are the fundraising numbers for the RNC.
Sure.
All right, you got total receipts, $121.4 million, cash on hand, $39.8, debts owed, $0. Then we go to the Democrats. The Democrats, $60.7 million, cash on hand, $6.3, and $2.6 in debt. Eventually, the primaries end, and you need the national party, the fundraising to fund the campaigns to make them win.
Sure.
How do the Democrats do this?
Well, a couple of ways. First, I do reject the notion that the Democrats are a progressive party that need to move to the left. If they're going to win working class voters back, it's not by moving to the left. Frankly, the best asset the Democrats now have are the Republicans and their lack of popularity, because sadly, Dan, friends and colleagues in the Democratic Party, you need one on growth, on infrastructure, and it necessarily involves the Republicans as well. But the individual Democrats running, David, to your question, are outraising the Republicans. I think there have been 30, 35-odd Republican retirements. The fundraising numbers for the party committees, I believe, are running parallel with, if not in some instances ahead of the Republicans. And if the Democrats stay 11 points ahead, there's one thing I know for sure. They will raise all the money they need, as they did in 2016. Money is not the Democratic Party's problem. It's message.
All right, Kaylee, message, money. But Donald Trump stole some of their issues. Did he steal infrastructure? Did he steal blue-collar issues from the Democrats? And to Doug's point, their party shifted hard to the left.
David, undoubtedly, Donald Trump spoke to those factory workers in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania who the Democrats had left behind. I mean, if Democrats would listen to Doug, they might have a chance in 2018. But unfortunately, the Democratic Party has floated so far left. They're the party of socialism that wants to take your money, that wants to overregulate you, that wants to force you to buy health care. That's the state of the Democratic Party. And then on top of all of that, they're the party that rigs elections for Hillary Clinton at the expense of Bernie Sanders. They're the party that rigs elections. They're the party of socialism. That's their legacy.
All right. So, Dan, we've gone through the political analysis on the ground. And I know you watch this carefully. You talk about it when you get on radio and television as well. What about the boots on the ground, the people that are going to volunteer to help the parties, the blue-collar folks out there? They wear out a lot of shoe leather walking for candidates. Where do you see the energy? More with the Democrats, more with the Republicans, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, I'll take each side first. The Democrats, David, there's no question, and it doesn't do Republicans any good to ignore this, they're angry. And to deny the fact that anger is a great motivator to get people out to the polls, and we have seen relatively high turnout, astronomical turnout in Alabama. For Republicans to ignore that is political suicide. But having said that, the media is doing itself no favors by constantly providing a foil and a reason to be angry for Republican voters. There's a litany of fake news, false charges against the president constantly, bad reporting. There's this special counsel investigation that's and I don't mean to highlight anger too much, but it's a real human emotion and a real motivator. And Republicans are angry too. And until this stops, this witch hunt against the president, I think that this special counsel and the media and their zero credibility and their collapsing credibility, I think it's doing the president, the sitting president, a great favor, and is going to be a great motivator in these midterm elections to get people out.
All right, special counsel. Now we have a New York Times report I mentioned at the beginning of the show. The president saying that he believes Robert Mueller, and I'm paraphrasing in this 30-minute interview, saying that he believes Mueller will treat him fairly. Doug, from there, I mean, breaking news, the president saying what the Democrats are not. They're saying he's going to fire Mueller, he's going to throw him out, or the media, whatever. And now he says, hey, Mueller's going to treat me well.
Well, look, I think that's a very positive development. The Democrats should get off the line of saying that, former Director Mueller's, removal is imminent. Let this process play itself out. Don't politicize it. Let's see what General Flynn has to say, what Mr. Papadopoulos has to say, and most of all, let's let the investigation play out. Though I must confess, the FBI and the DOJ do have issues that have to be investigated, but Bob Mueller is a man of unquestionable integrity. His investigation has a ways to go. Watergate, I think, took 3 or there have been 4 pleas already. There's more to go before we can reach a judgment.
Kaylee, months. Okay, Doug said Watergate took 3 years plus. He's right. Different time. Now we have technology. We have the FBI and the DOJ effectively, according to Devin Nunes, stonewalling on delivering documents, and FOIA requests are flying out of Judicial Watch. Did the president and what he just said hand the RNC and the messaging arm of the RNC a chance to go out there and say, look, we're not trying to shut it down. We want it to go forward. What is that message?
Absolutely. The president's always been clear. He wants this investigation to conclude and to be conducted fairly because there's no Trump-Russia collusion. That was always a conspiracy theory. Also, one of the biggest fake news stories of the year, it's hard to rank them, but perhaps taking the cake, is this idea that President Trump was ever going to fire Bob Mueller. He was never going to fire Mueller. Mueller's tidying up this investigation. It's coming to a close, and it's time for Democrats to step back, accept the facts that Russia-Trump collusion was always based on the words, by the way, Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat. That's what this was based on. It was a hoax to topple the American people and the person who they chose in the 2016 election, and that was Donald Trump.
All right, so Dan, who do you think answers in the long run with the dossier? Who paid for what? We've heard all the debate on that. Who answers? Is it the FBI? Is it Mueller? Is it other replaced chief of station like... you name it. Who is it?
Yeah. You know, David, if Donald Trump's name was Donald Obama, this would be the scandal of the millennium. I mean, think about what's happened here. This is a complicated case. I get it. The viewers get confused sometimes. Here's what happened. Boil it down to the nuts and bolts. A president-elect was spied on by a sitting president via unmasking techniques. None of that is in dispute. The only thing in dispute is why he was spied on. David, can you answer that question? To this day, nobody can answer the question why the president was spied on. Oh, they'll say, oh, it was Russian collusion. Where? Where's the collusion?
Well, they've clearly got to develop the evidence. They clearly have to present something. Or, Doug, I hope we don't see 3 to 4 years of this. I hope we don't see 4 or 5 months.
I hope we don't either. But
I don't think it's good for the country.
I just don't think we can politicize, rush to judgment. General Flynn, who was, I think, working closely with the Russians on his own, has taken a plea, a very favorable plea. We got to hear what he's got to say.
Not during the campaign, during the transition, Doug.
Well, no, he went to Russia in January of 15. He made a compensated speech. He sat with Vladimir
by the way,
Putin.
by the Obama administration that reauthorized this security clearance. Guys, I got to leave it there. But, Doug, always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
David,
Kaylee,
always a pleasure
Dan,
as well.
We have much more to come on this. Coming up, more on President Trump saying he believes special counsel Robert Mueller will treat him fairly. That's right, he said it. We'll get reaction from Florida Attorney General Pam Biondi and our very own Greg Jarrett. Stay with us.
Fox News Channel is bringing you an all-American New Year's celebration from New York City. And join the conversation using hashtag Fox News 2018. Kick back and watch the ball drop with your hosts Kennedy and Jesse Waters live from the heart of Times Square. Our must-see coverage begins New Year's Eve at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fox News Channel.
This is a Fox News alert. In an impromptu interview with the New York Times, President Trump predicting that special counsel Robert Mueller will, quote, treat him fairly. And while he's not calling for an end to the investigation, he told the New York Times, and I quote, the sooner it's worked out, for the better it is for the country. We'll get back to that in a moment. But also tonight, Chairman Devin Nunes to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, in which he blasts the DOJ and the FBI for their failure to fully, and I say fully, produce documents related to the records by January 3rd. And he also wants to know by that date when the witnesses his committee subpoenaed back in August about the dossier will be available to testify. He ends the letter by writing, and I quote again, at this point, it seems the DOJ and FBI need to be investigating the fire in York, that Nunes is issuing a subpoena to David Kramer, a former State Department employee with ties to Senator McCain. Joining us now with reaction, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. I got it right there, Pam. Let's have a little fun with it. I do this to you a lot of times, don't I? Put that extra I in there. And our Fox News legal analyst, Greg Jarrett. Pam, first to you, looking at this as someone who, from the Attorney General's chair, has had to do a lot of high-profile cases. When you start getting these ties, when you start getting these questions about who has ties to what, a compendium of questionable information, practices, tweets. What do you do when you're at the top of this?
Well, Chair Nunes is doing exactly what he should do, and I'm proud of what he did. You know, and I always start off by saying, as a career prosecutor, my entire career, and now Attorney General of the third largest state in the country, there are about 40,000 great men and women of the FBI throughout this country, and there are a few bad ones in the Justice Department who are making the rest look bad. And that's not fair to those great men and women who are out there risking their lives every day. We have Wiseman, we have Strzok, we have Page. And by the way, Strzok shouldn't be in HR. He should be fired. We have now James Baker allegations. We have all of these things. So the Intelligence Committee, they have to take it upon themselves, I think Greg will agree, to do the investigation the right way and call for these people to be taken off who can't handle it the right way. And the American people deserve that. You know, this investigation should be beyond a reproach. This is the President of the United States.
But, you know, Greg, Washington is an interesting city because there's the bureaucratic deep state, outside or inside of party, how they line up aside.
Sure.
But to Pam's point, this has become very clearly biased in some ways.
Right.
And the stalling, the cover-up,
sure,
the burying of facts and data. And, you know, Devin Nunes, what does he smell here?
He smells a cover-up. There's only one reason why you would defy and stonewall and evade a lawful congressional subpoena for 4 long months. And that is if you're trying to hide evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the FBI and the Department of Justice. It all comes down to the dossier. If it's true that it was a complete fabrication and the FBI knew it, and nevertheless they used it to launch the Trump investigation, that renders the entire investigation a charade and delegitimizes the Mueller investigation. You've got this all too cozy group of guys, Comey, Mueller, Weissman, excuse me, and
Andrew
Rod
Weissman, Bruce Orr.
Yeah, they've
guys
all worked together for years and years and years. And there's something unseemly about that because they appear to be ignoring evidence of illegality on the part of Hillary Clinton, potential illegality on the part of the FBI, and they seem to be determined to find wrongdoing on the part of President Trump where none exists.
All right, Pam, unfortunately, sometimes you can't separate the law and politics, especially when you get into either a state capital or a nation's capital. So even if, as Greg says and lays out, and you've talked about, they're able to deal with the inconsistencies, the problems, the investigation falls apart or they're unable to produce evidence, there is a political aspect to this. How would that be resolved, and is it possible?
Well, I've come to the conclusion now that this investigation into the president needs to end. Every day we're finding out someone else involved in it. And as Greg said, I mean, this investigation should be beyond reproach. And there are so many great men and women out there who are capable of conducting an investigation with integrity. The FBI stands for integrity. That is their motto. And that's what we have completely lost here. And when you're an FBI agent, regardless of who it is, it should not be about politics. And clearly they've demonstrated, these people that we've all laid out, have demonstrated such an extreme bias, but potentially criminal actions by changing. Strzok was involved in talking to Comey about changing the language so Hillary Clinton wouldn't be criminally charged. I mean, this is serious stuff that we're dealing with a few really bad people at the top making the rest look bad who shouldn't in our country.
I think most of the FBI rank and file, good, fine, honorable, hardworking, excellent people. It's the senior management, this group of individuals, McCabe and Baker and Strzok and Page and even James Comey, that are suspect by virtue of their actions and the messages they exchanged. This needs to be looked into, and Devin Nunes says it's time you guys investigate yourself. I disagree. They cannot investigate themselves fairly and objectively. And so this demands a second special counsel to look into their conduct. The Inspector General's already doing it, but he has no real authority to bring a case.
All right, well, that's the case for the special counsel. This resistance, Pam, goes a little deeper and I think a little wider. When you look at things like the New York Attorney General, your counterpart in the state of New York, Eric Schneiderman, when you look at Hillary Clinton, you just mentioned her. You can't seem to get her out of the conversation. The resistance and the deep state combined, and Greg's points about they can't investigate themselves. But does a special counsel get us where we need to be, in your opinion?
Well, as a state attorney general, knowing Jeff Sessions, our United States Attorney General, what I hope Jeff Sessions, Greg, has already done, and we don't know about it, is come in and have these people all work for him. He is the man at the top, and I'm hoping that General Sessions has come in and has somebody investigating all of them. You know, we hear now that who's resigning? McCabe is going to resign. McCabe should be fired if these allegations are true, where he's not getting his pension. He's going to resign in 2018. He should be taken out of the FBI immediately. So I would hope that our U.S. Attorney General is investigating all of these people through a special counsel, because Greg's right. They can't investigate themselves.
And you know what tips me off about Mueller and his lack of fairness and impartiality? He knew early this last summer that Strzok had sent these anti-Trump, pro-Hillary text messages to Lisa Page. He knew that, removed him, but never disclosed it to Congress upon their request and demands. He stalled for 4 long months, and so did Rosenstein. They covered it up. Now, if you truly care about the fair administration of justice, you don't cover that up. And to those who argue, well, he removed them, so it's okay, how much damage did people like Strzok and Lisa Page do in the full year they were investigating Trump, first with the FBI investigation and then later in the Mueller investigation? All
right, guys, we got to wrap this up quickly, but I'll go to Pam on this one, and that is, of course, President Trump and Rod Rosenstein. Here we go again. The New York Times, I mean, President Trump's being outspoken. What do you say?
Well, President Trump knows he didn't do anything wrong, and this has gone on long enough. And that's why I think President Trump said what he said. He knows he didn't do anything wrong. He knows this has gone on way too long. He's out there doing tax reform, putting great Supreme Court justices on the bench. All of our rates are lower than they've ever been. Unemployment is lowest it's ever been. The president's out there doing his job. He knows he did nothing wrong. We need to move on with this.
All right, so Greg, if you know you've done nothing wrong, and let's take in Pam's comments, and you're the president, has he set himself up correctly with the Mueller statement that he made to the New York Times? And what should he do about Rod Rosenstein, if anything, next?
Well, first of all, he said exactly what I would tell him to say if I were his lawyer. Don't criticize Mueller himself, and the president's smart enough to do that without counsel, and that's what he did. In terms of Rod Rosenstein, I mean, this is deeply troubling. He has a conflict of interest that disqualifies him, but he continues to insist that he will not recuse himself from the case. He continues to insist all is well. Everything's perfect. Mr. Rosenstein, everything is not perfect. Look at all the people that have been removed because of misconduct in this case and suspicion of wrongdoing. That tells us all is not well.
All right. Well, thank you, Pam. Greg, great to see you again, as always. Coming up, a new shocking study from the Pew Research Center exposes just how biased the mainstream media has become. Prepare to be outraged. We'll bring it to you next. Stay with us on Hannity. Welcome back to Hannity. Right here on this program, Sean's been warning you for years about the extreme bias in the mainstream media. And according to a brand new study from Pew Research Center, the media's coverage of President Trump's first 60 days in office was historically negative. As you can see, just 5% of the reporting was positive, while a whopping 62% was negative. Compare that to the media's coverage of President Obama's first 60 days in office in 2009, where 42% of the coverage was favorable. Of course, this shouldn't come to a surprise to anyone. Here's just a small sample of the media's coverage of President Trump over the past 12 months.
He's unhinged. It's embarrassing. His speech was without thought. It was without reason. It was devoid of facts. It was devoid of wisdom. There was no gravitas. There was no sanity there.
We have an Archie Bunker-in-chief who is disrespecting American Indians and making classless jokes from the podium.
Is this president trying to impersonate Hugo Chavez, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Vladimir Putin?
Apparently, the president gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone else around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
At the dessert course, he gets 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream with his chocolate cream pie instead of the single scoop for everyone else.
He's gained weight, according to these sources. He doesn't trust people around him. He's withdrawing. Not a good picture.
He's a racist, okay? He came proverbially as close as you could possibly come to shouting in a rally the N-word. That's what he did down there.
Donald Trump, again, being a schmuck. He looked like a thug. He looked like a goon. You look at the handshake. You look at this. Just what a thug. And you have somebody inside the White House that the New York Daily News says is mentally unfit, that people close to him say is mentally unfit, that people close to him during the campaign told me had early stages of dementia.
I asked the simple question, where's the policy disagreement in all these comments from the media? I know they're out there actually somewhere. Joining us with reaction, Fox News contributors Tammy Bruce and Jeanine Borelli, as well as Democratic pollster Pat Caddell. Pat, great to see you. It's been a while, Pat, so I'll start with you. You've analyzed media and politics for many years. When you look at this type of coverage and you look at the compendium of this, what do you say to the media? Are they getting the Trump bump for their ratings, and do they need it, or would they survive without it?
Well, you know, I assume they would survive no matter what, but they have clearly been building their ratings on this. But, you know, it just didn't start in the early days of this administration. More and more studies that show that the major networks, 90% of the stories that they have been running for the last 9 months or so are negative. We see that from the Media Center reports. We see all of it. And you don't even need the numbers to know. All you have to do is read the New York Times and the Washington Post and some of the other press and watch some of the other cable networks to realize how biased, as Jimmy Carter said, the worst media any president has received. The media is supposed to be in our system adversarial or challenging in the sense of transparency. But this media is much worse. What it is doing is it is running its own narratives. It is not adversarial. It is oppositional. It has decided it is in arm in arm with the opposition of the Democratic Party to this president. And they do it in terms that are so incredible, as you just ran some of them. Thug, racist, whatever you want to call it, demented, all of the things that you hear regularly, the President of the United States being called, which are unprecedented. And then people say he's unprecedented in his hostility, then they have certainly deserved it.
All right, so Tammy, let me go to you on this because, you know, I see this as not good for the country. I see this, regardless of what side you come at this from, you know, when the media does this, they abrogate a key responsibility, like Pat said, to be adversarial, to ask tough questions, but it's not good.
Well, let me suggest that this also is not new. It is just a little bit of a different shade. A different light has been turned on, and what the media has been doing